이거 주시가 나이트 요 뭐 이거
بسم الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد عبد الله التعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث بالتمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وصحبه وسلم والداعي إلى الخير والدلالة على الهدى ابتغاء وجهه سبحانه وتعالى وثوابه وقربه سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا من فضلك علما وهب لنا حكما والحقنا بالصالحين سبحانك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك فلك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد الرضا اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض ومن عليها وأنت خير الوارثين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته Inshallah, continuing with the lessons of the book إيضاح أسرار علوم المقربين, which is translated as a clarification or an elucidation of the secrets of the sciences of those drawn near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we hope in ourselves and all those that have been listening that it has started at the very least a paradigm shift in how we relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how we relate to people, and that we are doing the heart's work required on this path to the rectification of our states. The author continues, and where we left off the last time was when he spoke about controlling one's anger, the different manifestations of anger. And then what we mentioned is the crux of the book is for a person to stay away from any quality which is the sole prerogative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when a person manifests any quality which is the sole prerogative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which Allah has not enjoined human beings to become imbibed with those qualities. For example, Allah is merciful and Allah is generous. These are qualities which humans should try and imbibe. But there are qualities which are the sole prerogative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The qualities of exaltedness, high-handedness, pride. And when a person manifests these qualities, it is as though they are vying with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have challenged Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this also is in the Hadith al-Qudsi. In the Hadith al-Qudsi, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in a Hadith al-Qudsi that pride is my upper garment and exaltedness is my lower garment. And whoever vies with me for my garments, I will qasam to. The Arabic word means break their back, meaning I will destroy him and obliterate him. Meaning the quickest way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to always put oneself down and not regard oneself as being better than anyone else. And we spoke about how the path to that would be doing menial tasks. And from last week to this week, we have to call ourselves to account. Did we just listen to the lesson because it sounds nice, or did we call ourselves to account? Did we try and do menial tasks? Did we have opportunities in which we consciously put ourselves down in front of other people? Not for the sake of people themselves, but for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, based on the doctrine that those who are closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and have the highest station with Him are those who are putting themselves down in His eyes constantly, in their own selves, and also when there are people that are vying and the egos are flying, this person has no problem to put himself down in front of others. So the author said this station is the aspiration of the Abdal and the mainstay of the utterly devoted saints, where the servant retains no will but that of his Lord. This is what the true servant, or this is what a true servant of Allah is. Know this and be aware of the inner workings of the desires and hawa, for they latch onto the heart stealthily. They may even exist in a devout worshipper without him being aware, possibly corrupting his deeds without him realizing it. And this is the worst thing about hawa, is that a person can be doing good deeds. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions also in Surah Kaf, who are the قُلْ هَلْ أُنَبِّئُكُمْ الْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. Who are the greatest losers? Those who lost all their efforts but they thought they were actually doing good. Right? In that the spiritual diseases, this hawa is there. It is the driving force of everything that we are doing. It even takes the manifestation of certain forms of religion, but this is not accepted in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they may even exist in a devout worshipper without him being aware, possibly corrupting his deeds without him realizing it. The same applies to a person of knowledge. If he does not awaken to his inner self, his desires will overwhelm him, confuse him, and lead him astray. And then his knowledge becomes the means of his misguidance. That which was supposed to be the means of his guidance becomes the means of his misguidance. And the verse of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَى فَأَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ. Have you seen the one who takes his hawa as his own Lord? Meaning, there are people who worship their hawa. They don't worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that the nafs wants, they give it. Anything that their hawa, their intellectual arrogance tells them to do, they go with it. So Allah says, فَأَضَلَّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ. Allah caused them to go astray, even they might have knowledge. And ala ilm has different interpretations. But what is worse is the verse that follows. وَخَتَمَ عَلَى قَلْبِهِ وَسَمْعِهِ وَجَعَلَ عَلَى بَصَرِهِ غِشَاوَةً فَمَنْ يَهْدِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ اللَّهِ. Because of a person following his hawa, and Allah describes it as worshipping his hawa, Allah says, He sends him astray on knowledge. وَخَتَمَ عَلَى قَلْبِهِ. Allah seals up his heart and his hearing. وَجَعَلَ عَلَى بَصَرِهِ غِشَاوَةً. Allah puts a veil over their eyes. فَمَنْ يَهْدِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ اللَّهِ. Who is then going to guide them after Allah? And can you imagine a person who has knowledge, but he is operating with a sealed heart, sealed hearing, and blind? In Arabic, they say this person, تَخَبَّطْ أَشْوَائِ, mean he only confuses, creates confusion, and his life is only an ocean of confusion, and he doesn't even realize it. And worse than that, he thinks he's doing something good. He thinks he might even be serving the deen or the religion. Or in any other person in their household, the person or there, he thinks he's running his household in the best of ways, but he's a tyrant in his home. And how can a person operate if their hearing is sealed, if their eyes are veiled, if their heart is sealed? فَمَنْ يَهْدِيهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ اللَّهِ. نَسْأَلُ اللَّهَ السَّلَامَ وَالْعَافِيَةَ. May Allah protect us. This desire and this hawa is mysterious, taking various forms. Some of them take such deep hold of a person that they drive him into a condition resembling madness. And an example of that is, he says, you see a stingy, aged person, or you see stingy, aged people who have become obsessed with amassing wealth. Guy's at the end of his life, but he's still collecting the dunya. He can't get rid of all that junk, and he's still buying more and more collector's items, right? When a person leaves, we leave with nothing. They appear mad in their pursuits because they engage in disgraceful things that erode their faith and integrity, becoming the subject of gossip. The love of wealth, the love of relationships. You'll find the same thing with a person. He doesn't know how to lower his gaze. He's an old man, right? And it is hoped that at the age where a person is old, he's getting gray, that they would have learned how to deal with his nafs. But this person is still, right? Still being operated by hawa. And so he can't lower his gaze. Becoming the subject of gossip. And generally, sometimes the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps a person, in inverted commas, is He exposes them. Because only when they become exposed do they become aware of their own faults. We always use this example of the glutton. The way the glutton eats, he isn't aware. It's only when he sees himself in the camera that he becomes aware of how bad he is. One of the people came to the sheikh and complained. She said, my husband, when he gets angry, he's like a shaitan. We can't, and this is a huge problem. So the sheikh advised him, they said, put a camera, keep a camera running in the house. And when he gets angry, make sure it catches him. And later in one of his easy moments, not when he's angry, just show him when he's angry how he's. We're laughing, but we should think of ourselves in the same way. If there was a mirror, right? I remember growing up even, right? Parents would tell you in a way of reprimanding you, you get angry. Said, I can see the horns of shaitan coming out of your head now, right? And that's to make you scared, because that's what anger is. Anger is from shaitan. And so we have to have the self-reflection. What is the effect of our actions on people? The way we talk. When we get angry, are we aware of what we're doing? Are we aware of, the way we might even pull our face? And the only way to become aware, and this is, maybe we should use these devices for self-reflection. Because what does the cameras do is they turn, we say turn the camera on your heart, right? Turn the mirror on your heart. Record ourselves when you get angry. When we speak to people, right? The arrogance in our tone, the arrogance in the words we use as well. And no one is going to inform you about this. There's no one to help you on your spiritual path besides yourself, because we many times just contain people. We know this person has a particular bad habit. We tolerate him, and if there's no refinement, we go and speak to everyone else about him. This person just talks the whole time. Oh, this person's coming, he's going to waste my time. He's just going to talk. He loves talking about himself. Or she just loves talking about, or she's just going to tell me about her holiday, right? That's backbiting on the one hand as well. But that person who falls into that particular disease, how will they ever become aware of it if no one is there to give them sincere advice? But the nature of the ego is it's not able to receive advice if it's not in the right level. And even the mashayikh sometimes are unable to tell their own disciples and murid certain of their spiritual diseases, because the nature of the nafs is that it doesn't like to acknowledge its faults. Right? It requires a very high level of refinement for a person to be able to be told something. But listen, you are like this, you are like this. This is for them to say, alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair, shukran. It's really, it's perceptive insight and something I need to work on. Because the natural way of the nafs is to be rebellious. Imam al-Idrus, one of the students who was in his company for a long time, goes to the sheikh and tells him, please tell me what my spiritual diseases are. He says, you won't be able to bear it. And just be patient, and it gets sorted out slowly, 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 slowly. And the nature of how tarbiyah works is the mashayikh will be teaching and they'll be mentioning certain things, and then suddenly something clicks. Maybe 6 months down the line, like, astaghfirullah, what a fool. He's been talking about me all the time. And we think he's talking about someone else, but it's done very generally. But now, when does that click happen? Is when Allah wants that person to become aware, but there's some resolve for this person to want to change. If that resolve is not there, then we always redirecting the sheikh. And what's worse is sometimes the sheikh is speaking, it's like, yeah, he's talking about that guy there. He's talking about, I hope that guy is listening. Or he's not here, I should record the lesson, I'll put it on my status. Right? Whereas we have to be aware of our own diseases. So this person, every time he comes to Imam al-Idrus, so one day, khalas, Imam al-Idrus starts pulling out all the, he says, you're like this, and you have this, and you have that, and things that are even beyond him. Right? Those that narrate the story, it says the person became so upset, he started to swear the sheikh. Right? Yeah, didn't I tell you? And we have to acknowledge that this nafs is rebellious. And only if we acknowledge that it's rebellious and it has all these diseases, right, we try to then find out what are the manifestations of these diseases. So these people that run after wealth in their old age, they remain oblivious to their state, intoxicated by the thrill of their desires. And this is because of hawa. Person, and the way we are people of hawa, the way we eat, the way we shop online. People that have access to wealth, right? And if they don't know any way of stopping anything that they see, they can buy. This is hawa, right? So a person will amass a whole lot of things. Having 100 pairs of shoes, and you only wear a certain amount, right? Or buying things just to keep in the cupboards because perhaps 10 years down the line I'll need it. This is all hawa, manifestations of gathering wealth. Other manifestations of hawa, Imam Ghazali also mentions about this person. He's involved in interest. He does people down in business. He robs, he steals, he does everything. And in the end of the year, what does he do? I'm going for Hajj. Right? And he goes for Hajj. With what wealth? This is all hawa. He's operating in those. There's absolutely no alignment now between the mind, the intellect, the heart, the soul. And these are manifestations of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends people astray. Similarly, there are those, and the author wrote this next section in his age, before the age of social media. And it was almost as if he was referring to our age. Similarly, there are those who become captivated by outward appearances or external forms of beauty and fall into infatuation. We spoke about this a few days ago, day before yesterday, in the Asr lesson, right? About the nature of beauty and how we have been deceived by what beauty is. And that any beauty, if it's not a reflection of the Prophet ﷺ and not connected to the Prophet ﷺ, then it is not beauty at all. So he says these people are captivated by outward appearances or external forms of beauty. This arises from idleness and a weakness of the soul. When infatuated, they may experience a state akin to madness, where their ability to discern fades and their judgment becomes impaired. And the pictures of those pop stars and movie stars on the, and you know where you see this sometimes? When you see people, these people that act in the movies and they have some premiere thing, and then all the fans come to meet them, you know, and as soon as he walks or she walks out of the car, what happens to them? They become infatuated and they scream. This is exactly what he's talking about. This leads them to commit reprehensible acts, all the while remaining unaware of their state due to the overpowering intoxication of desire. And this is one of the diseases of the nafs, is to be attracted to external forms only. And just because something looks nice, or the space looks nice, and the person completely loses themselves. And this is exactly what the West and what the culture of movies and Hollywood has brought people up to be. Only appearances. That if the appearance is fine, with absolutely no regard for what lies beyond the appearance. This person can be, and you got a picture of someone in your home, and that picture is worse if it's in your heart. You copy, you're wearing what they wear, you have even your handbags and whatever it is, what they, and this person could be the biggest fornicator, the biggest intoxicated, drunk, right? Have absolutely no status in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Is because we were just taken by the appearance. And this is a spiritual disease. And the way to get beyond this is we have to go beyond appearances. And that Allah does not look at your forms, but Allah looks at where? At the heart. And so even a young boy or a young girl, when she wants to get married or he wants to get married, unfortunately in today's times, what's the first thing people are concerned about? Is, are they attractive enough, or, right? But who asks, how is this person's heart? Because the heart is where true beauty actually manifests from. And if a person was connected, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and even the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give them visions of beauty, of what is beauty in His sight, even though people might not even see that as being beautiful. Right? And we spoke about how Imam Sha'rani, he says, if a person still differentiates in forms, he's still caught up between thinking a frog is ugly and a gazelle is beautiful. He says this person doesn't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're still taken by forms. Right? The person has to delve beyond into the true nature and the true reality of affairs. This leads them to commit reprehensible acts, all the while remaining unaware of their state due to the overpowering intoxication of desire. And when you find these people, you know, worshipping these idols and worshipping these people, it leads them to a state of madness, right? It leads them to a state of, they're not able to think, they're not able to sleep, and they're caught up in, and that person that they're worshipping doesn't probably even know that they exist on the face of the earth, right? And what was it for? And you'll find this person because, oh, this person, whatever, okay, there was a certain star, whatever, and they got married, and this person goes into a depression. Some of them might even commit suicide. All for this. This is reprehensible, but this is how evil and how despicable the nafs and the ego can be. We're using these as examples. We have to all self-reflect on the things that we are falling into in a similar manner. It might not be as manifest as these examples, but there are things that we are falling into which resemble these. Desire for you has blinded me, as it was said, the poet said, desire for you has blinded me and nothing else can enter my sight. This is that infatuation, right? And they would use this. And when you speak about the West, and we spoke about in the lessons before, the be-all and end-all of what people's lives are is to find their soulmate, right? And then everything is going to get sorted out for them. And this is never why and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. And everything that we read about poetry and you know, romance and all these things. It was all there just for distractions, to distract people from the true love of Allah and the Prophet ﷺ, which only when a person connects to Allah and the Prophet ﷺ intimately, right, and on a soul's level, do they really begin to live and feel and experience, right? And experience love the way Allah desires. One of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names is Al-Wadud, is the loving. Have we ever experienced this loving care and concern from the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That emotion that a person feels towards someone that they think they're in love with. Has a person ever felt the spiritual form of that from the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? And if one has not, then even that is not a true expression of what? That is all just nafs. And anything of goodness in this world, and even expressions of love, if it is not rooted in love of Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then it's not its true, authentic form. We seek refuge in Allah from the harm of these states. Know that this state of desire holds power over meek and weak souls, yet holds no sway over prudent and elevated souls. How apt is what has been said in this regard. Meaning, what is the difference between weak and meek souls and prudent souls when these desires overpower? Is that the strength of the intellect of the people of the Sharia, the people who are on the path of knowledge of how to purify the heart, prevents them from falling into these despicable states. And we spoke about the pause. They are able to stop. They are able to, within those split seconds, they are able to stop and calculate that this is not something that is pleasing to Allah. This is not something that is in my best interest. And at the very least, this is not something that's even good for my integrity and my honor and my image. And they wouldn't get involved in these particular things. Right? When he's speaking about forms here, being taken with the external forms, what's the greatest manifestation of this in our life in today's times? So Instagram and Facebook. Even the people that we see on there, we know that that is not their true image. Even now, these filters we have on the cameras, right? You can enhance a person. And how foolish is it of a person to be taken by someone else's form and they know that that is not even. And what's worse today is you find people now falling into being taken by the AI. An entire image is an AI generated, right? And now they're having relationships with AI. What is the state of people come to? As it has been said in this regard, when the call of desire tempts us, this is one of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaching those that would read his words about how they control their hawa. When the call of desire tempts us and listeners are swayed by sweet words, meaning everyone else is going with the flow, right, because of what is being said. And when people engage in intense inner struggles to reason clearly, we judge with fairness and decisiveness. People are confused as to what the correct course of action should be, but we know exactly what is the right thing to do. We judge with fairness and decisiveness, never allowing falsehood to masquerade as truth, nor clinging to falsehood instead of the truth. We fear that folly may taint our sound judgment, causing us to fade into obscurity with the obscure. Right? And these, you call them stalwarts, right? Are people who can stand strong in the face of their hawa. The strong people are not the ones who are strong in their muscles, and the great people are not the ones who can run the fastest, right? And they are champions because they know how to jump from one point to another, or they can jump from one, right? What is the real competition? Who are the real heroes? Are those who have mastered their nafs, they've mastered their ego, they've refined their characters, and no matter what tribulations come to them, they are like rocks. They will never swerve from their path, and they will never swerve from what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are not people who are still struggling with their gazes, right, and falling into one day, and the next day they gaze, the next day they don't gaze. They've already dealt with that. And even if the entire world's tribulations had to come to them, it would never swerve them. Right? They are not people who are running after wealth. They are not slaves to wealth. They're not slaves to their stomach. They're not slaves to their anger. And these are the heroes that the world ought to know and be introduced to. And these are the only heroes who ought to be followed. Right? And they are the only ones who ought to be, you know what a hero is? That people look up to them and they want to emulate them. But we've made running after despicability to be what is sought after. And so we worship people who run after despicability. We worship and we run after people who are manifestations of the worst form of the human soul. Whereas those people who have mastered and perfected their souls, who are truly beloved in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we might not even know who they are, they might not even exist. And sometimes, how did the Prophet ﷺ describe them? رُبَّ أَشْعَثْ أَغْبَرٍ. They are dusty, they are disheveled, مَدْفُوعٌ بِالْأَبْوَابِ, that if they knocked on your door, you would have chased them away. But what is their state with Allah? لَوْ أَقْسَمَ عَلَى اللَّهِ لَأَبَرَّ. If they just have to speak a word, Allah will cause things to change according to what they said. If it's not raining and they said, today it will rain, Allah will cause to rain. لَوْ أَقْسَمَ عَلى اللَّهِ لَأَبَرَّ. لَأَبَرَّ قَسْمَهُ لَأَبَرَّ. Meaning, the things they speak, Allah makes happen. This is their state with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, because they don't look the way we want them to look, right? And they don't fit the image of what we think is, what do? We despise it. But what is the true nature and reality? Is that they are beloved in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And many times the real people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are like this. Could be a beggar sitting on the corner of a street. It could even be that beggar that's coming every week at the masjid or coming and troubling you at your home, right? We don't know. The Mashaykh would say usually the first beggar that comes to you in a day is an angel in disguise, right? Testing that nafs. Because it's not about the beggar and it's not about the money. It's about your heart and how you deal with that person. Do you think you're better than them? Do you respect them? Do you have a good opinion about them? And many times, even the stories of Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam, right? The people in their two opinions, the majority opinion is Sayyidina Khidr alayhi salam is alive, right? And there are stories of people who interact and meet him. And the Mashayikh would say that he usually only manifests himself to someone after testing them. And he would test them how? So the story of one of the Mashayikh, he says they went for da'wah. And these are stories, experiences. People don't now take things out of context. When we talk about stories, everything comes back to the authenticity of the chains of narration and who has narrated the stories. So one of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says they went out for a da'wah trip to a community in which they had been neglected for many, many years, meaning even the masjid was neglected. The people in the area were Muslims, but some of them not even reading salah, not even coming to the masjid. So he says they get there, they're shocked because the state of the masjid is almost like not taken care of. So they clean the masjid, they look and they start going around, knocking on people's doors, wanting to introduce themselves. They came from a long distance. They're hoping maybe someone would even, just entertain them. And no one in that community entertains them. In fact, the people start swearing them, people start abusing them. And as people start wanting to chase them away, they couldn't leave because they could only leave the next day. So Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, they're there and they're facing hell from the people that are there. And the worst of the people that was there was an old man, was very bad with his tongue, right? And now when they packed up the next day and they're about to leave, and they want to get out of that place as much as the people want them out of that place, right? As they're about to leave, the old man comes to the Jama'ah and he says, what is this Fatiha you guys talking about? Come teach me this Fatiha. And they all know, they almost in the car, packed up, they're about to leave. None of them want to. And one of Mashayikh, he gets out of the car and he sits with this man. And he says, teach me the Fatiha. And he's reading, he's making a mistake. Takes 3 hours. And this person is patient and patient and patient, and teaching him. As he's about to leave, he comes to me and tells him, I am Sayyidina Khidr. And because of this, you have a dua which Allah will accept. Any dua that you make, Allah will accept the dua. We have many stories like this in the books of the pious as well, right? But look at how the test came, right? And to what extent this person had to have self-control and be aware, have a good opinion of this person, of the beggar, whatever, or even of the people that the du'as down. And because he was also someone of refined character, he said, you know what, if there is any dua accepted, accept the dua for my teacher and my sheikh. I don't want anything. And that was also a test of him. Right? The tests don't stop because the prize is the greatest prize now. Going to extremes is also a desire of the lower self. And this is another manifestation of our lives. Going to extremes, extremities. And it is a deplorable type because when it attaches to any aspect of a person's religion, it defiles it and causes alienation from the true essence of the faith. You have to read this again. Going to extremes, meaning extremism, is also a desire of the lower self. And extremism can have different manifestations. Extremism in the way we live our lives, right, in different characteristic traits. But here, he's speaking about extremism in religion. It is a deplorable type because when it attaches to any aspect of a person's religion, it defiles it and causes alienation from the true essence of the faith. Meaning, the form of the faith is there, but it alienates people and it creates harshness, it creates enmity, it creates problems rather than actually solving problems. Religious extremists are affected by a recklessness in their attempts at being religious. Their habit is to engage in disputes and arguments about religion. Intolerance and hatred for those with differing views become their norm. Their religiosity takes the form of scrutinizing others for flaws and belittling and demeaning them. This is a very poor path that destroys a servant's faith, warranting utmost caution. And this is the manifestation of Hawa. But this now is Hawa, which is manifested in the form of religion. And this is exactly what becomes of it. And we need to repeat and read this section over and over again. Such extremists go to excess in venerating their leaders and are so consumed by adoration that they stray into forbidden territory, meaning our way or the highway. Right? Leaders meaning our madhab is the only madhab, our way is the highway, my sheikh is the only sheikh. Our ism is the only ism. Our understanding of the deen is the only way of the deen, right? And a person will even quote their sheikh and quote, because so-and-so said it, this has to be the truth, no one else has. Whereas the nature of religion, the nature of the world is diversity. And the secret to the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to be able to see unity in diversity, right? Whereas the nafs wants to see diversity from unity. In the thing that ought to be a manifestation, a beautiful manifestation of one thing. Imagine if a branch of a tree is so arrogant that it doesn't want to ascribe itself to the tree and regards other branches of the same tree as not being a proper branch. You know, your leaves are not, my leaves are perfect, your leaves are. I don't know where you're getting the source of your water from, but yeah, where's you one in the same thing? And you're all saying one in the same thing, but because one branch is, up and the other branch is lower. And this is how we are. But the worst type of hawa is when it takes the form of religion, where a person thinks that we're actually teaching the deen, but we're not teaching the deen. We're just teaching people our own spiritual diseases in the form of the deen. Such extremists go to excesses in venerating their leaders and are so consumed by adoration that they stray into forbidden territory. The prescribed approach to loving the imams and religious figures is to follow the middle path and avoid extremes. Umar ibn Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, used to say, let not your love be infatuation, nor your hatred be destruction. If you disagree with someone, you disagree with them with adab, with etiquette. There's absolutely no warrant for a person to fall into riba, to fall into namima, carrying tales, backbiting, lying, disparaging people's characters, right? If we have an issue with a person and we disagree with them, we disagree scholastically, right? And you mention what the issues are. The sign of a defiled heart is that now we disagree with someone on a particular issue. What do we start doing? We call that person names. And we start character assassinating. This means what? There's hawa involved. Whereas a person can be extremely vigorous in disagreeing on a point of view, but at the same time, he can be extremely respectful. And we have, even in our Islamic history, many manifestations of this. The madhahib itself, which is the different jurisprudence schools of jurisprudence, they would have major debates, what is called munadara, right? And they would argue and dispute in terms of interpretation of verses of the Quran, but it was all done in the sense of respect and scholarly, and there was no difference in the hearts. Meaning those same two scholars, they would argue with each other, but they would be able to go and sit at the same table afterwards, right? In fact, they were so honest in their debating with each other that they say a scholar with a particular opinion would come, and his intention was to defend this position A. And another scholar would come and he's defending position B. They would leave, and this scholar is now convinced of his approach, and that scholar is convinced of his approach. And they now go and they have the opposite opinion.
Yeah.
Right? And that can only happen if a person has deep down in their heart that I don't know it all. Perhaps there is another view. Perhaps there's another point of view. Right? And what's very what Stephen Covey calls the paradigm shift in his book 7 Habits, very important. We might think it's something simple, but it's so important, especially for students of knowledge. It's got the picture of the old woman and the young woman, right? And how two people can be looking at the exact same image, but one cannot see a different form. He only sees what he sees. And he'll be willing to swear and kill that, no, this is a young woman. It's only the picture of a young woman. And another person will say, no, it is a picture of an old woman. Whereas if you look at it from one angle, that is true, and you look at it something else, right? And to be able to give other people the benefit of the doubt, perhaps he's on a level. And what did Imam Shafi'i, even when he developed his madhab, what did he say? He said, we believe that our opinions are true with a margin of error, and we believe that the opinions of the others might be in error with a margin of truth, meaning there is a possibility that there is something we haven't really actually. So he wasn't like, I've interpreted this and Allah gave me this great genius intellect, only my way is the highway. This is what we have reached, but there is a possibility, there is a margin of error. And we are open to explore, we are open to, and this is the way a person has to operate. If we don't meet with people, we don't interact with people, whether it's, no matter who they are, with this thing deep down is, what can I benefit from this person? Then we'll never really have a true relationship with them. Even the lowest of the low, if a beggar comes to us, we should have, what is it in this person that I can actually benefit from? And what's the best thing we can learn from a beggar? What's the lesson we learn from a beggar? Is how to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That beggar is teaching us how we ought to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does the beggar come? Right? Comes humble, comes complaining, might come crying, right? Even puts his hands, bows his head, right? He might even go down on his knees. And then what do? We feel a sense of pride and arrogance. What's he doing? This is my wealth. And we won't even give him 10 rand, and he'll go bust 100 rand somewhere else, or 500 rand, and we haven't learned the lesson. Who sent the beggar to us? Allah sent them for a reason, to teach us. Each and every single thing that we come across in creation is a means of approach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we see the signs in them. So let not your love be infatuation, nor your hatred be discretion. There has to be moderation, even with the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where we would find that there is this very intense degree of love that the student has for his sheikh and the sheikh has for the student, but it's not something that is apparent. It is understood, it is respected, and it is kept in moderation. There will never be a thing where a person goes to his teacher and says, oh, you know what, I feel so much love in my heart for you, and I don't know, and today, and this is what composure is that when you feel something, you respect someone, you love them, it's something inside. Let your actions convey that to them. Let your demeanor convey that to them. Let your soul convey that to them. You don't have to verbalize everything, right? And likewise, some of the mashayikh, so they say the disciple comes to the sheikh, it says, you are the only Sheikh for me, and Allah has put such love in my heart for you, and I want you to take. And so the Sheikh tells him, but don't you know that that Sheikh there is on a higher spiritual level? So he looks, he says, you can go. If he was true, he wouldn't have,
Look.
he wouldn't have looked. No. The Prophet ﷺ said, do not praise me in the exaggerated manner that the Christians praised the Messiah Isa, the son of Mary. Meaning, the Prophet ﷺ set the standard. The way this is interpreted is, as long as a person does not believe that the Prophet ﷺ or ascribe to the Prophet ﷺ what Isa alayhi salam, what the Christians ascribe to Isa alayhi salam, meaning shirk, halas, then there person can praise the Prophet ﷺ. In fact, when people praise the Prophet ﷺ as well, they say there is no limit to the virtues of the Prophet ﷺ. But we also have to read this in the sense of what? In the Prophet ﷺ teaching us, he was being humble, he knows. And in other hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he bites into the leg of the animal that was cooked and roasted for him. And he says, Ana sayyidu walad Adam wa la fakhar. I am the master of all the children on the day of Qiyamah. And I'm not saying out of pride. He had to teach the Sahaba his maqam with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he was teaching us as the Ummah, right? Do not praise me. How many of us, right, when we receive praise, do we get happy or do we get upset? We get happy, right? How many of us have actually told people, please do not praise me and do not praise me public? And how many of us, even beyond that, how many of us have the extent that we treat the people who praise us, we get upset with them? And those who don't give us any sort of recognition, we are humble and amicable. And the way this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is actually teaching, he's teaching us to be humble. He's saying, don't praise me as, or don't praise me in the exaggerated manner. Even though the Prophet ﷺ himself knew that no matter who praised him, and if every single creation in the heavens and the earth had to try to praise the Prophet ﷺ, they would never be able to reach the true stature, the nature of who he is. And so it means we have to be humble as well. And we have to actually be upset with people who praise us. And the goal, as they say, is to reach the point where when someone disparages you and someone praises you, it's one and the same thing. The worst thing is to be praised about a quality that you don't even have, and you start feeling good about it. All right? Whereas a person should, whether that praise comes or the disparagement comes, it's one and the same thing. What's the only thing that matters? Is my state with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah knows my state. So who am I fooling by? By being deceived by what people say. And if we are really true, we have to realize that most people, the job of most people is just to praise and appease. You never take what people say without judgment, right? Everything someone says, oh, mashallah, that's what are the motivations that this person is saying that? This is when you're being self-critical. But if we just listen and we go with, how many times haven't we praised someone? I'll give you guys an example, right? So someone gives a talk. Maybe he's a young, upcoming, for whatever reason, he had to give a talk. And he gave a rotten talk. Right? What do we tell him afterwards? MashaAllah, MashaAllah, it was good. Alhamdulillah. Don't we do that? Right? Don't we do that? So how many times aren't people telling us certain things about ourselves just to appease us? But in the true nature and the reality is that it was rotten, right? And so you should never be deceived by even what people say. And people can praise you as much as they want to, right? Tomorrow, when something happens, they'll all leave you. There was a sheikh, there's a nice story about that. I read it in a Turkish book. So this sheikh is with his murids, and he only has 10 or 15 murids. In many, many years, they're doing what they do, the ibadah and the worship, and no one's coming to the sheikh. And one day what happens is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala manifests a miracle at the hands of this sheikh. Someone came with a very severe disease or whatever, and the sheikh read on him and he cured. The next day, the masjid was full with people. The sheikh saw it, so mashallah, he cured, and they all started attending, and now his masjid cannot even, right? And so this continues for a couple of months. One day he comes from the Fajr Salah, and he brings the entrails of an animal, right? And he puts it in this plastic bag. And when he goes into sajda, he presses on the plastic bag. So there's a sound that comes out and there's a smell that the next day no one's in his masjid. And he tells his murids, he says, this is a lesson when it comes to how you deal with people. People are there when it's in their ulterior motives to be with you, and they're not there when it's not in there. How can we ever then judge and base our relationships with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on what people are saying? And therefore, the only one that we are concerned about is what is Allah, what is our position in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we find even, they can have millions and millions of followers. It doesn't matter. If they have one follower and they have billions of followers, it's one and the same thing. And they're not moved by this. As opposed to what? Look at what the opposite Shaitan wants. He wants you to have subscribers. How many people, they open their sole life's job is to get subscribers on the social media, right? And because this one is more subscribers and what other people, they don't even know these people. And when people are exposed, that's when the true reality then come out. Nasallallahu salama wa afiyah. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, stick to the people of the middle path. Alayka bin namtul awsat. Those who lag behind will catch up to them. And those who go too far can return to them. And moderation is always the way of the Prophet ﷺ in everything. Anytime, and we must notice, and if we ever in a situation, generally, whenever you are in a situation, you would find that you are always caught between extremes. And the best way is in whatever it is. You always are the mind naturally, and the nafs naturally wants to go to extremes in everything, even in the choices we make, right? Even in things you want to buy, right? And the way we even want to deal with people. The nature of the nafs is to go to extremes, and the tarbiyah is that we choose the moderate path. Therefore, dear brother or sister or reader, pursue the path of the elite and leave aside the concerns of the general public, for most of them hold only to superficial forms and practices performed out of habit, right? And this is how they would teach the disciples. They would say, people are like sheep. They only run behind those who are shouting the loudest slogans. So when something is trending, people follow. If it's not trending, they go. And the media is the perfect example of that. And a person has to learn what is the correct path to know that even if the whole world is going in one direction, that this direction is the way of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure lies. So leave the concerns of the general public, for most of them hold only to superficial forms and practices performed out of habit, meaning we are not even concerned if the whole world speaks out against us, if we affirm that this is what is pleasing to Allah and this is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. The extent of their concern, meaning the general public, is observing only outward forms of deeds while neglecting to consider their essence. Now, again, when we read the books of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they teach us something like this and say we mustn't worry about people. Or we read this example and say you must stay away from people who distract you from Allah. You start thinking, oh yeah, this person, that person. But how many times aren't we those people to others, right? And we those who are distracting other people from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes people come to the mashayikh and they want to spend time. For example, they come and they want to have a meeting with the sheikh, and the sheikh are busy, right? And maybe takes the time to, and sometimes some people get upset, right? Because they say, I've been here for so long, I've traveled so far to come and I didn't get a sitting. And then we have to teach them. So, we were reading the lesson in the morning where the sheikh spoke about, Imam al-Haddad said in his book, we must stay away from the negligent, stay away from people of the dunya, stay away from this. He says, we are the people the sheikh are taught to stay away from. We want all the time, we want all that, but we are the ones that they are being taught to stay away from, right? But this is also, we have to be we don't read the books of Tasawwuf and blame other people and look for the diseases in the house. We have to believe we are the ones who are referred to in these books. So the extent of the concern of people is observing the outward forms of deeds while neglecting to consider their essence. And we always should only be concerned about the essence, never the forms. The form can take many manifestations, but what is the essence? Is the essence Allah? Is the essence the Prophet ﷺ? Is the essence a reflection of the beauty of Allah in the Prophet ﷺ, or something that leads to Allah in the Prophet ﷺ. And if it's not that, then no matter what that form is, we have to leave it. The knowers of Allah, the Arifin Billah, or those who know things through Allah, however, care for the essence of obedience and the beauty of worship. They worship Allah paying concern to quality over quantity. So they're not just about khatams in Ramadan, right? They're about how can I recite this Quran in a way that I feel Allah. If I have recited the Quran and I have not felt Allah, if I have prayed, if I have read my salah and I have not felt Allah in that salah, I need to repeat that salah. If I read that page or that verse and I didn't connect to Allah, then I need to repeat that. Whereas the general public is what? Khatams, quantity, 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 quantity. Finish. I did 3, 4, 5, 10 khatams in Ramadan. What did it do to your heart? Are you different? And when we connect to Allah, we start changing, right? When we connect to Allah, Allah then takes it upon Himself to rectify our hearts. And the sole concern in all of the ibadah, in all of the actions is it connecting me to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And that connection is that feeling that a person has, right? That spiritual feeling a person has in their ibadah. If we're not getting that feeling in our ibadah, means we're missing something. The people of Allah are those with complete intellects and sound hearts. It is due to the intellect that the ranks of men are distinguished, and due to the soundness of perception that the levels of worshippers are set apart. This also is a qaida, it's foundational rule, it should be written in gold, right? What is the only thing that guides the intellect is the knowledge of the sharia and the tariqah. Knowledge of what Allah wants from us and learning the types of things which this book contains, so that when we need to make choices, we make choices based on knowledge. It is due to the intellects that the ranks of people are distinguished, and due to the soundness of perception, meaning that inner insight, that spiritual insight, that the levels of worshippers are set apart. Because those with internal spiritual insight, they won't just worship Allah for the sake of worshipping Allah. They will pay attention to their hearts that, is this the right time for this ibadah or not? Is this the best form of ibadah for this particular time or not? This is based on what Aisha radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her, would say, whenever the messenger narrated that whenever the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was informed of a man's efforts in worship, he would inquire about his intellect. So and so is worshipping Allah, he's done so much ibadah. How is his intellect? Meaning, is he someone who's discerning? Can he differentiate between what is the better of two goods and what is the worst of two bads, or is he just in autopilot? Know that this book is genuinely derived from the beautiful meanings of the Sunnah and the intricate wisdoms of the Sharia. It is the knowledge of those who know Allah and the law of those traversing the path, those truly engaged in spiritual struggles and endeavors, not those of idle talk, right? And it's easy to talk the talk, but we need to walk the walk. The way of the knowers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to follow the example of the early generations, the companions and the tabi'een. Their beliefs are those of the righteous predecessors. They neither deviate from their sunnah nor diverge from their ways and objectives. And when we talk about the ways of the predecessors, we're not just talking of their outer actions. We spoke about this a few days before. When we want to emulate, we should try and emulate people's inner qualities. Sheikh so-and-so, used to stand awake at night, or used to read the whole Quran. Imam al-Shafi'i used to make 2 khatams in Ramadan. So everyone goes and tries and they make 2 khatams. But what was it that led to Imam Shafi'i wanting to make 2 khatams? It was an internal state with Allah. That's what has to be emulated. The Prophet ﷺ stood awake the whole night. So someone stands awake the whole night. But what was it that made the Prophet ﷺ stand awake at night? That's what has to be emulated. Imam al-Haddad would read 200 rak'ats every day in Masjid Ba'alawi after his morning lessons. What made him do that? And those are the inner qualities, the heart's work, the sincerity, the ikhlas, right? The truthfulness, this working on the heart, those qualities need to be emulated. So sometimes people even, they would say, when they take part of the dunya and they are told, you know what, this is consumerism. Say, but Imam Malik, used to wear nice clothes, and Imam Malik had a big business. Imam Abu Hanifa was very rich, right? So yeah, but they also stood awake at night, and they had complete sincerity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we only emulate in the things which suit us, but we don't emulate in the inner qualities. And emulation is for those inner qualities, right? The heart's work, the sincerity, the ikhlas, the fear that they had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sense of gratitude, the hope, right? That real complete pleasure with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's decree, the complete tawakkul. This is what we have to emulate in people, not the outer actions. Their outer actions was only a manifestation of the inner states. So when we speak of emulation, our first point of reference should be what? To try and delve into those inner states. But because they are inner states, they are hidden. And so the job is then to try and decipher them. Therefore, cling to the sunnah, hold onto it firmly, avoid new harmful, unorthodox practices, bid'ah in the path, and shun their proponents, and you will be rightly guided, inshallah. That brings us to the end of the preface. And now on page 22 is the introduction. The introduction to the book. But this preface is enough, right, for a person to reflect, to ponder, to think, and to call themselves to account. I'm not sure if there's any questions. And if there isn't, we'll close, inshallah. Is there? Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq, and to use these remaining days of Ramadan to practice and self-reflect. And sometimes for a person to spend time just pondering over the nature of their nafs and how bad it is and how to actually rectify, and to just call oneself to account and put oneself down in one's private moments with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might be more beneficial than doing many, many khatams of Quran and many, many forms of ibadah, which doesn't have the sense of self-reflection. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us tawfiq. May protect us from the evils of the nafs and hawa and the dunya and shaitan. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. يا حضرة